Canadian Professional Golf Tour on its way to Thunder Bay. A major boost for Lakehead University's new law school. And new details emerge on the Washington Navy Yard shooter. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Professional golf is coming back to our city. The PGA Tour Canada announced today that the Thunder Bay Golf Classic has been added to its annual calendar of events.
It's a 3-year commitment that will bring some of the best pro golfers from this country and around the world to Whitewater Golf Course. Ryan Benazzo has more on what it means in terms of exposure and economic impact.
For more than a decade, Whitewater has been Thunder Bay's premier golf course, and now the PGA is taking notice. Tuesday morning, PGA Tour Canada announced a 3-year commitment to the Thunder Bay Golf Classic, set to tee off from Whitewater Golf Club next July. Tour President Jeff Monday says the course has the 2 key elements they look for in host venues.
One is a real good test of golf. There's the quality of the golf course is just superb, and that's what you have to. You want to test all the shots for the players, and I think this course will do that. The other nice aspect of it, they have their practice facilities just superb.
Early projections forecast an economic boost of up to $2 million for the region over the life of the agreement. That's according to Thunder Bay Golf Classic director Scott Smith. But he's even more excited about the exposure that an annual PGA Canada event will bring to the city.
It's televised on Global TV, it's televised on TSN. So there's a lot of exposure, and plus the players that come to play this event. There's only about 30% that are Canadian, 50% are Americans, and the balance is from all over the world. So there's a lot of exposure from people coming from all over the world to play here.
Riley Wheeldon finished the 2013 season in second place on the tour's earning list. He participated in all 9 PGA Tour Canada tournaments, winning this year's Syncrude Boreal Open in Fort McMurray, Alberta. He says another event equals another opportunity for players.
To have more events on tour is another good thing. It allows the tour, the players, more chance to prove themselves.
We are committed to having tournaments exclusively in Canada from the beginning of June through the middle of September. So having a nice full schedule of there, eventually getting to 12, 13 events.
And the Thunder Bay Golf Classic is the first addition to that 2014 schedule and the first professional golf event to be held in the city since the CPGA Heritage Open in 2001. Ryan Benazzo, TVT News.
Randy Sheffy will have more on how local golfers can qualify for that tournament coming up in sports.
The Thunder Bay Police Services Board received its 2012 annual report today, and the results appear to be positive. The document is aimed at giving an insight into crime and police activities going on across the city and to report on the progress the police service is making. Courtney Rutherford reports.
It's a report that highlights everything from crime stats to civilian satisfaction. The 2012 annual report for Thunder Bay Police shows crime is down by nearly 200 incidents since 2011. However, there were 7 homicides in 2012, the highest rate in Canada, and just over 1,100 occurrences of violent crime. Chris Adams says although they are pleased with a lot of their results, there are still a number of areas he's concerned about.
While there was a decrease, we still have to acknowledge the fact that we are still in the top 10 in the country, and we have to always work hard to be vigilant in both the enforcement and working with our other community partners. So that's always going to be a concern. There's no getting around that, and I think that every community has a safety and violence concern, and we're certainly not immune to that.
Stats Canada numbers in the report show a drop in violent crime, property crime, and youth crime. All of the categories have hit 3-year lows. Chief of Police J.P. Levesque attributes the decline to the strategies that involve the police force working with community partners. He says they've tried alternative methods when it comes to how they treat crime in the city.
I think that there's a sense of what's the root cause of crime, and we're getting a better handle on that within the community itself. So our partner agencies, so you're seeing things like treatment and diversion and different things. So I think that all contributes to a drop, or that significant drop that we saw in 2012.
The report also showed that the majority of the people surveyed are pleased with what the local police force are doing for Thunder Bay. Courtney Rutherford, TVT News.
There was plenty of debate last night on the potential of limiting the number of pets a household in Thunder Bay should have. A little over a month ago, council shot down the idea of even getting a report on what other communities do, but they have now reversed that decision. Dennis Ward has more from City Hall.
How many pets a household should have continues to be a divisive issue for council. The entire debate was sparked when Councillor Aldo Roberto started receiving complaints about people hoarding animals. But Councillor Andrew Fold says many people have multiple pets.
They're taking good care of their pets. There are even some people in this community that have as many as 10 pets, that they're all spayed and neutered, they're well taken care of, they're getting the kind of nutrition that they need to get, they don't make any noise. And I really don't believe that they should be penalized.
Rebecca Johnson doesn't feel that as a councillor, she should decide what people have in their homes. Numerous other bylaws are already in place to deal with people and their pets. Johnson thought limiting the number of animals someone could have was ridiculous.
How do you say to somebody, you can only have 2 dogs? Like, how do you do that? I just that's totally impossible. Or how many can have 4 or 6 cats? And I know people that have 6 cats. Who's going to go around patrolling that? Like, talk about enforcement. We would have to have a number. We would have to have a huge number. How do you go and knock on somebody's door and say, you have 6 cats, you can only have 5?
Roberto says this isn't about going after good pet owners, but about having additional enforcement options for the bad ones.
I understand there's a fundamental, opposing, violating people's rights, but what about the right of the person next door? What about the right that the children that live in that house with 10 cats and 15 dogs and aren't taken care of? What about those rights that don't have a chance to speak up?
Councillor Brian McKinnon felt the debate was more emotional than it needed to be. Council was only asking for a report back with options and a look at what other municipalities are doing.
Not going to come back with anything so draconian that we'll be out there with stun guns and everything else for people who aren't adhering to some ridiculous bylaw.
This time around, the vote was again tight, but council has asked for the report on limiting the number of domestic animals per household. It's expected in December. Council also approved a new deal with OLG that will fetch an additional $86,000 a year in revenue. Some intend to bring forward a plan to stash the new money away for youth centers. Dennis Ward, TVT News.
Meanwhile, to eat or not to eat was the subject of a lengthy discussion at City Hall last night. Years ago, the council of the day decided a meal would be provided to councillors if a closed-door meeting started at 5 o'clock, but not later. The idea of bumping that time up a half hour to 5:30 was floated last night, with many councillors weighing in. So far this year, meals before the meetings have come at a cost of nearly $7,000, or about $300 per meeting. There were many who spoke out in favor of having the food provided before the regular meeting of council gets underway, but not everyone thought that taxpayers should be footing the food bill.
Many times we're rushing from work, from different places, and trying to coordinate everything and trying to worry about, the last thing I want to worry about is, am I going to eat?
I don't quite understand why other people cannot eat when the meeting doesn't start at 5:30.
I believe in eating at home, and I don't think, I personally do not feel that I should be eating on the taxpayer's dollar. So it's very seldom that I eat here at council.
In the end, an overwhelming majority of council voted in favor of having dinner provided before Monday night meetings that start at 5:30 or earlier.
Some exciting news for Lakehead University's new Faculty of Law. The school received a huge private donation at a special ceremony. The Patterson Foundation donated $1 million this morning. The money will help with the ongoing renovations to the former Port Arthur Collegiate Institute. In recognition of the gift, the Faculty of Law's main auditorium will be named the Patterson Foundation Faculty of Law Auditorium. Patterson Foundation President Don Patterson is a third-generation supporter of the university. He says the gift recognizes the school's social and economic importance to the community.
We wanted to make a gift that was significant and particularly supportive for the law school, and that would really set a benchmark for others in our community and from outside our community to come in and support the law school.
You can't do it simply through, government funding. There needs to be community support. And I think that's the message, is that the Pattersons are saying, we support this law school, and that's the wonderful thing.
Stucer adds the gift will help transform PACI into a space where students will be inspired in their studies. The Patterson Foundation's previous gifts to Lakehead include funding for the Chancellor Patterson Library and the Advanced Technology and Academic Center.
Superior North EMS and Thunder Bay Police were forced to come to the rescue early this morning on the city's south side. They responded to a report of an intoxicated male who had fallen into the water near the Donald Street underpass. EMS personnel were able to pull the 42-year-old man to safety. He was taken to hospital suffering from hypothermia.
People traveling down 20th Side Road today may have caught a last glimpse of what originally was the Neenbig Fire Hall. Demolition crews were on site this morning to start taking down the garage that was later turned into a fire station. Crews spent the majority of the day taking down the roofs and walls. For the rest of the day, we're carrying out the hefty cleanup on the property. A temporary shelter for the firefighters has been constructed at the North Neenbig Community Center, where the fire crews will operate out of until the replacement fire station is complete. The new building will be constructed on the site of this old one and should be operational by mid-2014.
There were cheers and applause outside of a Toronto courthouse today. Former residents of a provincial government-run institution won a settlement worth $35 million. The settlement relates to allegations of abuse dating back to the 1940s. Jeff Semple reports.
We won!
Edgar Riel has been waiting 5 decades for this day.
About time. 50 years is too long to wait.
Riel was just 9 years old when he was sent to live at the Huronia Regional Center, a century-old institution for people with developmental disabilities.
They designed a place that was supposed to help us, not scar us for life.
Patricia Seth grew up in Huronia and says she endured 13 years of emotional and physical abuse.
And not only were we scarred in that place, but we carry the scars outside that place, emotionally, mentally, and physically.
A few years ago, Seth and others launched a class action lawsuit against the Ontario government, seeking $2 billion in damages on behalf of the thousands who lived here between 1945 and when the center finally closed in 2009. That class action lawsuit was supposed to begin in court today, but in a surprise move this morning, the Ontario government announced a settlement.
Relieved and elated.
$35 million to be split between the 3,700 living survivors, equally divided about $10,000 each, a fraction of what they'd asked for. But outside court, they all said the same thing.
I didn't come here just for money. I came here for justice.
Justice in another form. The Ontario government plans to formally apologize for Huronia. And perhaps most importantly, the site will now be open to scholars to collect artifacts and document the stories of those who lived and died here.
I felt like today was his birth and his funeral.
Marilyn Dolmage's 8-year-old brother died at Huronia from untreated pneumonia. The bodies of the dead buried in graves marked with a number, which will now be replaced with their names.
I'm very glad for those who survived. It's a commitment to honor those who didn't and to never forget.
Jeff Semple, CBC News, Toronto.
Busloads of students have begun arriving at Fort William Historical Park for this year's slate of school field trips. A battle of the brigades, ethnobotany, and a scavenger hunt were all on the agenda today for students from St. Pius School. Cheryl Holmes has the story.
Behind these walls, students are learning about unique historic activities to facilitate communication, problem solving, and physical activity. The one-day program is part of the Healthy Schools initiative put on by St. Pius School and the Catholic School Board.
We're going to be doing Voyager Games, or orienteering, a number of sports activities. It's a program that Dave Bragnello has put together in conjunction with the old fort, and we couldn't ask for a better day. The weather's beautiful. Students are enjoying every minute of it.
And how could they not enjoy every minute of learning about our region's history in a different format than the classroom?
Well, it's engaging. You know, we're outdoors. Everyone is involved. There's other people other just than the regular classroom teachers. It's applicable. They can apply it to their everyday lives.
Let's do the asterisk. One activity teaches students about wild edible plants and their uses in daily life. It can also teach kids a thing or two when they're headed out to camp.
Because we always have trees and sometimes we have to cut down certain ones. So here they tell you what kind of leaves they are, what they look like, what they can do for you. Same with all the bark and the wood.
This is the first year of the program, and while it can help students in the classroom in their lives right now, it's also a good way to grow as a team leader and take away some important historical lessons of Voyager life.
I think it's a good idea because so then I can tell younger kids stories about back then and what they did and how it was.
The activities lasted a half day before students headed back to school. In total, kids got to participate in 8 learning activities and games to stay healthy, both in mind and body. Cheryl Holmes, TBT News.
It's like a lot of fun. I'm jealous.
Yeah, hard to believe
We need
most.
a field trip.
Yeah, most of those kids weren't even wearing jackets.
I know.
And we can only hope, Fiona, that fall, when it arrives, is like today.
Well, today is pretty much what we should be seeing at this time of year. It's nice to be finally kind of normal with our weather because it just was not a normal summer. But we had some cool air, but it was seasonably cool. There's some more humid air trying to push its way up from the south, which is going to make tomorrow even nicer. But today we did top out with a high of 18 Celsius. That's with winds from the southwest at 14, sometimes up to about 28 kilometers per hour. Right now, we've dropped a degree. We're down to 17 in Thunder Bay. Everywhere else, high teens, even Big Trout Lake, 21. So unusually warm as you head a little bit further north. Sault Ste. Marie is currently at 16. Everyone's enjoying the sunshine. Tonight, mainly clear skies. We're looking at a low of about 9 Celsius. Might see a few cloud patches, but for the most part, probably a good night to do a little bit more stargazing because it's going to be relatively mild with more southwest winds. And as we head into Wednesday, as I said, more sunshine on the way, and you really have to enjoy it while it lasts because as you can see, we're starting to be surrounded. We've got showers to the south. For the most part, should stay out of our way for Wednesday, but it's this massive system that's moving in. This low is rather vigorous, and there's a fair amount of precipitation with it. It's a large system, and there's pretty much no way we can completely miss it, given its direction that it's following right now. So I'd say tomorrow, probably the warmest day of the week. Still a nice bit of sunshine, but by Thursday, probably going to need some umbrellas. I'll have more details on that later on in the news hour.
All right, thanks very much, Fiona. We are getting a clearer picture now of the man behind that horrific shooting spree yesterday at the Washington Navy Yard. We'll have details on that story and more for you as your Tuesday News Hour continues.
He just didn't seem like he would be that kind of person that would be that upset enough to go out and do something like this.
Disturbing details are emerging about yesterday's mass murder at a Navy yard in Washington, D.C.
The shooter was reportedly a man who was mentally unstable, who was hearing voices, and who owned a gun. Despite that, he also held a security pass that allowed him entry to the naval facility. Neil McDonald has more.
And why have we allowed ourselves?
The familiar post-massacre rituals have clicked into place here. Public vigils, ceremonial remembering. Today, the Pentagon's leaders laid a wreath for the dead, all 12 of whom worked for the U.S. military. And in the United States Congress,
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate now observe a moment of silence in honor of the victims of the tragic Navy Yard.
But the memorials for the dead in cases like this always compete with the public's desire for details about the killer. Aaron Alexis and his motives are now dominating the coverage.
He just didn't seem like he would be that kind of person that would be that upset enough to go out and do something like this.
Alexis, who died in a shootout with police yesterday, last lived in the Texas city of White Settlement. He apparently enjoyed Thai food at this restaurant and meditating at this Buddhist temple. And he reportedly nursed anger both at the Navy and at the terms of his military discharge.
He just was upset with the government about all that and just very, he just felt slighted by his benefits and by what he was getting each month.
Alexis was also arrested for shooting incidents in Texas and before that in Seattle, which raises the question of how he landed a job that gave him access to the Navy Yard in Washington yesterday.
Those sorts of things might have been warning signals.
Mental illness and an arrest record, though, is not necessarily a bar to gun ownership in this country. And already, gun advocates here are working to ensure that yesterday's killings will change nothing. Neil McDonald, CBC News, Washington.
3 Toronto firefighters have lost their jobs for making sexist remarks about women. But the comments weren't made on the job. They were posted on the men's Twitter accounts. And their union says the fire department is overreacting. Ron Charles reports.
The 3 fired Toronto firefighters are just the latest people to land in hot water for something they've put on social media. In the case of 2 of them, it was sexist tweets, some of them lines from popular, if not crass, TV shows.
I would never let a woman kick my ass. If she tried anything, I'd be like, hey, you get your ass back in the kitchen and make me some pie.
Also this, reject a woman and she will never let it go, one of the many defects of their kind, also weak arms. And this, would swat her in the back of the head being considered abuse or a way to reset the brain? The 3rd firefighter was let go due to a Facebook post Toronto Fire Service has not revealed.
Members of the Toronto Fire Service are in a position of public trust. This trust is paramount to the division's ability to carry out its work and deliver critical services to all Toronto residents.
Feminist technology writer Steph Guthrie says people are beginning to realize those 140 characters in a tweet are very real.
Because the internet is a virtual space, people often see the things that they say or the people that they're dealing with as not real, which, it's real people on the end of these issues.
This employment lawyer says no one should be surprised when public and private employers take action to protect their brand.
More and more companies are implementing acceptable social media use policies to set out very clearly for their employees what an employer's expectations are.
Representatives from the Toronto Firefighters Union call the firings overkill and say they will vigorously fight to have the men reinstated. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
We are learning that the cleanup in Lac-Mégantic, Quebec will be a Herculean task. Quebec's Environment Ministry says more than 100,000 cubic meters of soil will have to be removed and replaced because of toxic contamination. It has been 10 weeks since 72 freight cars carrying light crude oil derailed in the Quebec community, killing 47 people and destroying the oldest part of the community. The Environment Ministry report says 5.5 million liters of oil was spilled from the tanker cars. Now, most of it burned in the disaster, but the report says several 100,000 liters of oil went into the soil and into the town's sewer system. 31 hectares of land in the town are affected. Some said it couldn't be done, but they did do it anyway, and now the Costa Concordia is sitting upright in the Mediterranean Sea. Crew successfully wrenched the massive cruise liner upright overnight, 20 months after tragedy left it laying on a reef off the Italian coast. Sasha Petrusik reports.
The next step in this operation is going to be to examine this ship. Now, it may be hard to believe it's been here for 20 months, but officials really haven't had a chance to get inside and to see what's been happening. Not even divers. It's been considered too dangerous. So now they're going to be going through the ship and looking specifically for two bodies. There are two people who are considered to have died during the initial incident, but whose bodies were never found. It's an Italian and an Indian. They suspect that those bodies are still inside somewhere. They'll also be going from cabin to cabin, opening up the safes and collecting personal belongings. So people, the thousands who were on the ship who did in fact get off safely, they'll be getting a call at some point in the next little while from Italian officials saying, we found your passport, we found your money, we found other personal belongings. 20 months later, they will be pulled off from the bottom of the ocean and sent home. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News on the island of Giglio in Italy.
UN Security General Ban Ki-moon commented on yesterday's confirmation that chemical weapons were used in Syria. He also called on the U.S. and Russia to lead next week's Security Council negotiations on any possible resolution to end the conflict.
The finding by Dr. Sellstrom's team was undisputable and overwhelming. They are based on scientific facts. Therefore, we must not take business as usual. I sincerely hope that Russia and United States demonstrate their leadership at this time, particularly.
Canada Post is offering up a speedy news service that kicked off today, same-day delivery of online purchases. It's calling the service Delivered Tonight. It starts as a pilot project in Toronto in partnership with 4 big retailers, Best Buy, Future Shop, Indigo, and Walmart. If customers place their orders by noon, their orders are supposed to arrive on their doorstep by 9 p.m. that same day. Canada Post is tapping into the e-commerce world as it faces a steep drop in the volume of mail. All right, let's take a look now at today's activity on the markets. The TSX in Toronto posted a 17-point gain, closing at 12,834. The Dow was up 35 points to 15,529, and the Nasdaq jumped 28 points to 3745. Canadian dollar gained almost 0.3 cents to close at 97.13 cents US. Gold dropped $8 to $1,309 an ounce, and oil fell over $1 to $105.42 a barrel. We told you earlier in the news hour about the return of professional golf to Thunder Bay, with the CPGA scheduling a tour event for our city. Good news on a number of fronts, but especially for local golfers, some of them who are highly competitive and now have another outlet.
Yeah, I seem to recall like 12 years ago when it was called the Canadian Tour, we had a local golfer in at Thunder Bay's Davidson Matysik, and he surprised a lot of people, did very well at that tournament. So it'd be nice to see at least one, if not more, do the same thing next summer. Well, 156 golfers will be competing in next summer's Thunder Bay Golf Classic at Whitewater. Many will be professionals, but there's also room for a handful of amateur players to compete in the PGA Canada Tournament, if they can make the cut. Ryan Benazzo has more on how local golfers can qualify.
It's the biggest golf tournament to hit our city in well over a decade, but it's not just the pros who will be able to compete at the Thunder Bay Golf Classic. Amateurs like you or I, or, well, maybe not me because I can't keep the ball in the fairway, but theoretically, anyone can qualify for the tournament. You just have to finish in the top 10 of the Open Qualifier, which will be held here in town in the days leading up to the Thunder Bay Golf Classic.
Anybody and everybody can come out and play, enter, and then the 10 best scores from there are eligible to compete in the tournament proper.
PGA Tour Canada is a training ground for aspiring golfers, essentially 2 rungs below the PGA Tour we all know and love. Riley Wheeldon just earned his Web.com Tour card, the next step on the ladder, by finishing in the top 5 of all Tour Canada money earners this season. He says earning a spot in the Thunder Bay Golf Classic would be a feather in the cap of any amateur golfer.
Experience is everything. Play, compete at every level, and the more tournaments you play, the more rounds you play, the more comfortable you're going to get when the pressure's on. And eventually, you know, if you want to get to the next level, you're going to have to play well under pressure, and you can draw on all those rounds of golf you've played. So I'd say if you want to get to the next one, just get out in the golf course, play, practice, compete.
Next year's $150,000 tournament will be played at Whitewater from July 14th to the 20th. Ryan Benazzo, TBT Sports.
Well, week 2 in the NFL came to a close in the Queen City last night. Somebody's had to go as 2 winless teams from the AFC North hooked up in the Monday Nighter. It was Cincinnati welcoming Pittsburgh. Well, late first quarter, the Bengals will strike as Andy Dalton hands it off to Giovanni Bernard, and the first running back taken in this year's draft runs it up the gut 7 yards for the score. 7-3 Cincy. Pittsburgh ties it late in the second quarter as Ben Roethlisberger tosses a 1-yard pass to rookie Derek Moy, and he has his first ever NFL touchdown. Tied at 10 at the half. Third quarter, the Bengals quarterback dumps it off to Bernard over the middle, and he'll do the rest, taking it outside and racing 27 yards untouched for his second touchdown of the game. The Bengals finally win at home over Pittsburgh, 20-10. The SIJHL ushers in season number 13 with a pair of games Friday night, including the Thunder Bay North Stars visiting Fort Francis. NHL news, goalie Tim Thomas is officially back in the league after a 1-year absence. He is trying out with the Florida Panthers. And Steinbach, Manitoba's Ian White is trying out with the Winnipeg Jets. The hard-shooting defenseman has played with 5 teams in 8 years.
Obviously a benefit. Played 500 games in the league and quite a few years under my belt. Had some postseason success too. So, you know, every year and every game you try to learn and get a little bit better, and you know, experience helps out a lot. I've played long enough to know what I'm capable of doing, and knowing to play within myself and not do anything special. You know, I'm not all of a sudden going to be some dangler and try to make some fantasy moves and score a lot of goals, but I know what I'm capable of doing, and I know I've got a lot of game left in me, and that I can succeed and help teams win at this level.
You know, White's a veteran guy that come into camp. We'll see and take his play day to day where all that goes, but you know, we've got guys that have been knocking on the door here in Postma, Redmond, those guys as well. You know, where does Trouba fit in there, those things. So we've got some good competition on the back, and we're looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out.
Well, if you had yesterday in your fantasy hockey pool as the date that new Vancouver Canucks coach John Tortorella would finally go off on the media, you are a winner. Following his team's morning skate, this is what Torts did when a cameraman's cell phone went off during his news conference.
It's a much better opportunity to evaluate. And again, the emphasis are on the kids, especially the first couple. And scrimmage games are scrimmage games. Now you take your next step. That's going to be a major league fine, I tell you. I want to walk. I'll walk. If the cell phones go off, I'll walk. Yeah, so it's a next step in the camp.
He's in mid-season form already, and it's still the preseason. And congratulations going out to the Thunder Bay Chill under-15 boys soccer team on winning the Ontario Cup this past weekend. They beat Weston 2-1 for the title. Evan Sawula and Anthony Valenti had the goals. Also this past weekend, it was Montreal's turn to host many of the world's top cyclists for a Grand Prix event. We get the details in this report.
Launching from the base of Parc Mont-Royal, the 4th annual Cycling Grand Prix pedaled through the city streets. Once again, it played host to a rare collection of cycling royalty, like the reigning Tour de France champ.
Big names like Chris Froome, who won the Tour de France this year, and Alberto Contador and Peter Sagan, all those big names.
This is part of bicycle racing's world tour, involving more than 24 events worldwide. Only 2 of those events are in North America, and both are in Quebec.
It's just a good thing for Quebec and Montreal to have all those personalities. It's a big view for our province.
Don't think that this race is any small deal either. There are as many points to be gained here in Montreal as any other one-day race in Europe.
This is a World Tour group, I mean the World Tour circuit. And if I can compare it, it's the same thing if you have a Formula One car racing, event.
Serge Arsenault says that the Montreal race is now broadcast to 130 countries of the world.
Many people, worldwide look at cycling to look at the marvelous sight of the city of Quebec or even Montreal.
The event is getting waves of attention as professional cycling continues to be a major draw with fans. It winds around the mountains 17 times and is more than 200 kilometers total.
How many people and how many athletes can get up day in, day out and put in the amount of distances that these guys put in? They're true athletes.
And these guys move fast. On a per-hour basis,
it would be in excess of 60 kilometers, I would think. If they'll probably average in the high 50s.
Perhaps it could inspire another generation of Canadian racers as more fans come face to face with the sport.
It's fabulous. It's the top riders in the world.
Or maybe it's just a fun way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Billy Shields, Global News, Montreal.
In senior men's baseball playoff action last night, the Coastal Steel Orioles are a win away from the final, outslugging the Boston Pizza Red Sox 14-8. Robert Shedden had 3 hits, drove in 4 for the winners. Tonight at Baseball Central, it's the Daytona Dodgers and On Deck Athletics. That series is deadlocked at 1. And the Blue Jays are back at it after a day off, hosting the New York Yankees tonight. R.A. Dickey goes for his 13th win. Now the plays of the week.
That one's driven deep to left field. Going back is Soriano, leaping, and he made the play. He took a home run away from Machado.
Romo going deep for Des Bryant. Oh, he leaps for it.
Get off the field. That's up the middle. Segura on a play. Out at second. On to first. Oh, it's a double play.
Burris over the middle and what a catch. Vintage Andy Pantoos.
When you're not on a roll, yes, absolutely, there's momentum.
Eric Flair and a catch by touch.
And it is a 5-man rush. Manziel retreats. Look at this. He's still on his feet and heaves it deep.
Another first down. Burris will throw back. Pantoos, great catch.
Bounced around, and a guy with a little one makes a great barehanded play.
He really saw Jaw. Line drive off the glove.
How about that? Back again, and he got the out. How about the acrobatic Pedro Alvarez?
And now Durant with a free play looks for Simon.
And he makes the catch. He got belted by Matt Black, but G.Y. Simon makes the first one count.
And he runs. Soldado, good chest trap. Erickson, Sigurdsson!
Kadri trying to work a 2-on-1 with Levo. Kadri, a nice little play. He's gonna go. Goes!
3rd and 21. Penny slings it over the middle. What a catch!
And to the end zone, caught. Right, touchdown.
And that'll do it for sports.
All right, thanks, Randy.
Well, it looks like it's another blockbuster Tuesday night on Global Thunder Bay. With more, here's a complete lineup on Teletalk.
Tonight on Global Thunder Bay, we've got Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow. Starting at 8, it's Iron Man 2, and Tony Stark must battle a madman and his own technology. Over on CKPR Thunder Bay, we've got big laughs, followed by a family's shame. First at 8, Rick is off to Lake Winnipeg for some ice fishing on the Rick Mercer Report. At 8:30 on 22 Minutes, a tech expert goes crazy over the debut of some innovative new TVs. Then at 9, what really happened to the Shafia woman in the Kingston Canal on True Crime Canada. And at 11:35, George talks with actor, director, and writer Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Teletalk is brought to you by Points, the traffic ticket specialists.
Well, yesterday it was a chilly day, and I remember, Fiona, you mentioned that we were going to see a warm-up. I think we finally hit that warm-up.
Yeah, it's inching its way up a few degrees today. We actually topped out with a high of 18 under mainly sunny skies, and that's with some moderate winds from the southwest. But if we take a look what's going on across the country, seasonal day, Vancouver finally got a break and getting a little bit more sunshine today. 15 in Prince George, and yesterday Edmonton and Calgary hit highs of 28 and 27 respectively. It's now back to more seasonal values. Meanwhile, in southern Saskatchewan, another well above seasonal day, especially for Regina, currently at 26 under just a few clouds. Winnipeg, winds were from the south today, gusting up to 55 kilometers per hour. So they're at fairly seasonal levels, but it was another windy day. Speaking of second day of consistency, Toronto has got a second day of below seasonal temperatures. They should be back to normal by tomorrow. Ottawa and into Montreal has already started seeing a little bit of a warm up. And Quebec City, 15 Celsius, but windy and fairly sunny, which actually improved things from yesterday, where their high, I believe, was closer to about 12. Now, as we head into the Maritimes, below seasonal, but pretty sunny today. They should be warming up as well in a day or so. But St. John's currently at 8 Celsius. Clear so far, but they are expecting some showers tonight. Speaking of showers, today stayed fairly clear, but you can see the rain trying to develop above and below us to the north and to the south tomorrow. So we're looking right in the middle to be kind of a mix of sun and cloud for most of the day, but still a lot of heat in the region. Okay, we're not talking 30 Celsius, but a lot of heat, definitely above seasonal values, is expected. However, behind it, this low developing as it moves in, picking up some oomph, we like to call it, in the business. And as you can see, fair amount of precipitation potential. That should hit us by about Wednesday night, the beginning of what could be a fair amount of rainfall over about a 36-hour period. Now, tonight, very mild temperatures, 14 in Sioux Lookout, 13 in Dryden, 12 in Atikokan. This is a good 5 or 6 degrees above the norm for this time of year, and fairly clear. Tomorrow, sunshine, low 20s. How does that look for this time of year? Temperature-wise, let's take a look at the trends. You can see the heat is definitely to the west, but we are still slightly above or at seasonal values for most of the region. Tonight's going to be fairly cool, but you can see that mild air trying to push its way in. Tomorrow, high teens, low 20s across the board. Some areas even higher still. You can see that heat. It will continue into Thursday for most of the region, but by Friday you can see that cold air trying to push down from the south. You're definitely going to see a change in temperatures as we head into the weekend. At this hour we're at 16 Celsius, mainly sunny tonight, a low of 9, and just a few patchy clouds. First thing in the morning as you head off to work, head off to school, head off to wherever you happen to be going, 14 Celsius, mostly sunny start to the day, so it might be a little bit fresh first thing in the morning, but we should warm up quite nicely because we're going to top out with a high of about 20 under a mix of sun and cloud. Normally at this time of year, 17 is about all we can hope for. But by Wednesday night, low of 13, couple of millimeters. On Thursday, showers and a possible thunderstorm in the region, a high of 22, so it's warm, it's just very wet. But unfortunately, Thursday night, we could be hitting the brunt of it, 10 millimeters, even possibly more, low of 9, mostly cloudy on Friday and 15. It'll stay that way on Saturday under mostly cloudy skies again. Sunday looking fairly sunny, but a cool 13 Celsius. So grab your umbrellas, you're going to need them by about Wednesday night.
Turning now to health news and the growing problem of childhood obesity in North America. New research is showing the increase in teen weight gain is actually beginning to level off. Erica Edwards explains.
All this time spent on the playing field or playground and away from the television. Looks like it's beginning to make a real difference in the rate of childhood obesity.
That increasing prevalence of obesity is beginning to level off.
Dr. Ronald Iannotti and colleagues at the National Institutes of Health looked at data on thousands of teens between 2001 and 2010. They found previously rising rates of body mass index began to stabilize in 2006. So how'd the teens do it? 13-year-old Janaea McInnes hits the nail on the head.
All you have to do is just go outside and play.
She's a perfect illustration of kids getting healthier. And through a program at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, she found ways to encourage her family to make healthier food choices.
Had a lot more milk, not as much soda.
The study found teens are exercising more, and though they fall short of the recommended 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day, teens are eating better. Doctors say the result should be healthier adults with a lowered risk for obesity and heart disease.
Although you may not get kids with heart attacks, the damage is beginning while they're kids, while they're young.
While parents might agree some things about teenagers will never change,
I like to walk alone because it's kind of embarrassing.
At least their health appears to be changing for the better. Erica Edwards, NBC News.
I don't think you get much argument if you put forward the opinion that Prince Harry's a pretty cool guy, but even the royal prince got a little too cool for comfort last night. We'll explain why right after these words. Prince Harry has a reputation as a pretty chill guy, but this, folks, well, this is over the top.
It's your turn next, guys.
The royal prince spent last night in a giant freezer, part of a training exercise to simulate conditions he'll face on a South Pole charity hike in November. Harry spent about 20 hours in that freezer at minus 35 degrees, as well as getting blasted with winds of over 70 kilometers an hour. Now, after coming out of the freezer, Harry described the experience in just one word. You heard it there a moment ago: cold. I'm sure he had a few other choice words to say, but certainly not in front of a microphone.
Seems like a typical February day in Thunder Bay. We're going to recap our top story. Well, professional golf is coming back to our city. PGA Tour Canada announced a 3-year commitment that the Thunder Bay Golf Classic has been added to the calendar of events.
And that'll do it for tonight's look at news, weather, and sports. For News on Demand, log on to tvnewswatch.com. Thanks for being with us. Have a great evening. Thank you.